Hello and welcome to the Chorilosophy Podcast, a weekly podcast whose mission is multifaceted. Each week when you tune in, you will find episodes that question best practices, challenge music education dogma, facilitate conversations about touchy topics, demonstrate pedagogies, and conversations where colleagues learn from each other. This is episode 293. Middle school is just the right age for rigor with Ryan Lindley. What happens when you look at your choir's packed performance schedule and realize that you've been teaching the repertoire, but not the actual skills? Aren't middle school kids too young for a rigorous choir class experience anyway? Besides, they would just quit if they couldn't get an easy A and do lots of fun concerts, right? We often talk about wanting music classes to be treated with the same respect as core academic subjects, but are we holding ourselves to that same curricular standard? Joining me today is Ryan Lindley, an outstanding middle school director who found himself asking that exact question after finishing his 8th year in the classroom. Ryan realized his grading structure only measured one standard: performance. He set out to rewrite his entire curriculum to focus on deep, sequential music literacy, proving that middle schoolers are never too young for high expectations. We talk about the logistics of individual testing, building the student autonomy, and modeling growth in real time. So tune in and have your curriculum possibly challenged, have your thinking about why you teach and what you teach challenged, and then, of course, weigh in. Did we say something that sparked your agreement, your disagreement, or just something you want to add to the conversation? Head over to the Chorilosopher's Facebook page and weigh in on a post about this episode. Or you can head over to the Substack and leave a comment there. That's chorilosophy.substack.com. Your music program or event deserves a platform that does it all, without the extra costs. With Ludus, you get seamless ticketing, built-in marketing, powerful fundraising, and volunteer management, where volunteers can sign up, schedule shifts, and track hours with ease. Need to sell merchandise and concessions in person? Ludus Retail lets you log sales by each group, track inventory, keep everything organized. Hosting music lessons or theater camps? They have a classes feature, which makes registration and student tracking effortless. And it's free for your organization. Thousands of programs already trust Ludus because they help you focus on what matters most: the performance. If you haven't already, I really think it's time for you to ditch the bulky sight reading books, the paper, all of the things that are already in the kids' folders in your classroom because it's not customizable to what they need in the moment. Sight Reading Factory allows this and so much more. And then the work we do in the classroom can be customized to what they need in the music and the repertoire they're learning, and it can be customized to their current learning level as a group. So use the Chorilosophy checkout code, Chorilosophy. When you check out, it'll give you a 10% discount every time you get a membership for yourself and for all of your students, which is really, really important so they can do this at home. A big shout out goes to the producers and Inner Circle over at the Patreon page. These are folks that are really dedicated to keeping the lights on here at this show. Venture Studios, Chandler Smith, Brian Long, Michael Herron, Kyle Peterson, Steve and Kathy Kakachik, David Kowalczyk, Max Jackson, Angie Schilling, Rebecca Chalk, RJ McCracken, Michael Shimp, and Kyle Siddons. All right, everybody, I'm here with Ryan Lindley, and we're going to be talking middle school choir today, specifically related to concepts connected to curriculum, growth, rigor. What can we expect of middle school kids? Maybe what can't we? I'm sure there'll be room for all of that in this conversation, so I'm excited to go outside of my high school bubble and talk middle school today. So Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, the middle school bubble is it's real, and it's very different than the high school bubble.
Now, tell us a little bit about your world before we get too far into the conversation. Where do you teach? What grade levels do you teach? And kind of talk to us a little bit about how your program is structured.
Yeah, so I'm in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is, I think, about 60,000 people. I'm actually teaching at 2 middle schools next year. I'm used to teaching at one, Tipler Middle School, and I'll be teaching at South Park Middle School as part of a consolidation package, if you will. I also teach within Tipler Middle School. We have a charter school that's 4th and 5th grade and 6th through 8th grade. So one semester a year, I teach 4th through 8th grade, and the other semester I teach 6th through 8th grade. And I've been doing this for about 8 years now.
Awesome. That's very cool. So what would be a typical class size for you? And what would, it's just, I'm trying to get people context for this conversation. Class sizes, things like how your ensembles are split up by voicing. Do you separate kids out by beginner, advanced? Like, how does that part work for you?
Yeah, that is completely out of my hands, unfortunately. I've been begging for gendered or at least voice part split in the middle school because that's my preferred, but it really depends on what the core teachers need as far as prep periods. And so I'll have anywhere from 11 kids in one class this year, which was all girls, all sopranos and altos. And then anywhere from next year, I'll have a class of 45 mixed voices, 7th and 8th grade combined. And then for 6th grade, we run on an A-B schedule. So I'll have about 25 to 30 on A day, 25 to 30 on B day, and they meet every other day. And their other class is gym. So it really depends on what the other teachers need, unfortunately.
I see. Yeah, that's actually pretty darn similar to how middle school in my district, the schools that feed into our high school are. They alternate with PE, which essentially means an every other day format. How many class minutes do you get?
It changed last year. I think it's about 53, 52.
Okay. Well, that's not too bad. So you're basically getting them two or three times a week.
For 6th grade, and then for 7th and 8th grade, I get them every day.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. Yes. All right. Now I'm on the right page with you. So that's actually quite a bit more than our middle school kids get.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you're fortunate. So
yes.
Now, kind of also setting up this conversation this way, you reached out to the form on my website and suggested an idea for this conversation, which I appreciate. And your pitch, so to speak, was to talk about concepts related to rigor for middle school. And so what I'm assuming, and this is our chance now to kind of flesh it out, is what I'm going to assume is that you've had or seen some aspects of that conversation around what can we expect academically, so to speak, of middle school kids that you think needs to get fleshed out even further, or maybe you've seen some things that you disagree with about the way middle school kids are oftentimes taught. So what gave you the inspiration to want to have this conversation? Let's start there.
It really came from a humbling of myself where I thought I was doing rigor the right way. And it turns out I was just overloading them with concerts, which is an aspect of rigor, right? Getting them more in tune with high school in that performance aspect. But what really got lost in all of that was the academic classroom aspect of it. We were just performing. We weren't really diving deep into solfege and the literacy part of it. So that's what came out of it. It wasn't any examples that I was seeing outside of my own classroom. It was simply kind of a reminder for me that rigor does not just mean more things. It really does mean less, better.
I would agree with that. And I also think of it as it means holding not only students, but ourselves accountable for the growth in those things, whatever those things are. And I think there's room in music education for many classrooms to have a lot of different lists of things.
Yeah.
Of what is on that list of things that we want our kids to know. And I don't think it has to be the same in every classroom, but I don't think you get to call it rigorous if you aren't following through to make sure that you know that the kids are actually learning those things that are on your list. And so I think that's really interesting. I want to hear more about that realization from you. So you feel like you were over programming, essentially, giving them too much repertoire and then not focusing on some of the building blocks, fundamentals of music making that would carry them further into high school, et cetera. So what caused the wool to fall from your eyes?
Once again, a very humbling moment. It was my clinical teacher. We had been done with all of our performances and I was really proud of them. We went from 4 performances 2 years ago to 18 performances this year. And not just your typical choir concert, but I'm including singing in Wisconsin. I'm thinking honor choirs, just different experiences. And I thought that was going to be good enough to learn the music, to engage more in music making. And then my clinical teacher came in and she was like, so how far are they in solfege? And I was like, they know the words. Like if you said the words to them, we do poison pattern and things like that. And she really showed me that I was just too scared to do it. And cause she went in and she killed it immediately and the kids really gravitated towards it. And they're like, I felt like I actually learned something. I was like, oh man, that is a kick to the stomach. But it was needed because next year now I already have a curriculum that I'm creating that involves all of these different steps. We do standards-based grading. And I realized at the end of the year, the only standard that I had was perform. And I was like, that is unacceptable as a teacher. That's unacceptable as someone who is trying to use the word rigor in his classroom. And we're using lowercase rigor instead of uppercase rigor.
I like that. Now, yes, and it's interesting because, I'm a few years down the road further in my teaching career than you are. But I would say that my journey is very similar in that I started out really thinking about nothing other than the quality of the performance. Everything was focused on that. in the beginning part of my teaching career, and I didn't really know. I guess in my mind at the time, if I'm looking back and being honest, I was thinking about it like, well, if the performance is good, then that is evidence that I was teaching well, and that's
Correct.
actually all the evidence that you need, and that's kind of how I was raised. And I don't know if I would say it's fair to say that I was explicitly taught that. Maybe that was just the example that I saw, and it took quite a bit of years for me to kind of realize that that was actually not the right approach, at least for me. So when in your journey here and you're putting together new curriculum, those types of things, I wonder what you think about this. So I've noticed in what I do here at Choreolosophy, when I put out content, for example, about the things that I teach my students to be able to do, pattern recognition, music literacy, a cappella rehearsals, all those types of things that I advocate for here. One of the things that I get a lot and have for years is, well, that's fine for your privileged upper middle class high school kids, but my middle school kids are too young for this, or my elementary school kids are too young for this. And I hear that, but then I also hear on the flip side, people all over the country of all grade levels and all socioeconomic backgrounds trying some of these ideas and finding out that they do work and that they're not actually too young. So what's your feeling about that in terms of like kids being ready for more music literacy, kids being more developmentally able, as long as you're starting at an age appropriate level for them? How do you think about that?
Well, that's what's going to be going into my new curriculum is I would disagree with people who say they're too young or they're not ready. I think that's more of a reflection on, if I were to say that, it's a reflection on me, not the students. The students showed me that they are hungry. They desire this, that they love making music. And we sing hard repertoire. We don't sing, your stereotypical middle school 6th grade music. We sing things like "What Do the Trees Know" by Jocelyn Hagen, "Hands Are Knockin'" by Kyle Peterson, and we're singing these honor choir type songs, and they're doing very well. But they're not like you mentioned, the pattern recognition. When I was singing, like I was going like do 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 do, like it's just the same note up to here, down to here, and they just couldn't get it. And then my clinical teacher comes in and she's teaching them do, re, mi, fa, so, and I was like, it's just so me, and they're like, now I get it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I could have saved so much time if I had taken the time in the beginning of the year to just teach these 7 simple words and given them direction, because just giving them unnamed pitches just wasn't doing it.
Yes. And of course, one of the things that in my journey that I've figured out is that is a function of how our brains work linguistically. Your first example of just kind of singing, and I know, and I always make sure I reiterate this every time I talk about it on the podcast, is all of these I've made that mistake too. For years, I would bang my head against the wall by singing something for them that they've already kind of learned wrong. And then in my mind, I've done it for them so many times correctly that I could not fathom how they could not get it. And it led me to thinking bad, intrusive thoughts like these kids are dumb, or like, what the heck is going on? And in reality, I was just not teaching them the way brains work, which is that they need to learn language with context. And the solfege provides them context. And that there's harmonic context built into it. There is, of course, the phonemic recognition of the solfege syllables, helps them memorize that pattern. And once we teach it to them that way, then they're able to kind of self-correct, course correct. That's a really great example, because I can think of so many times in my early teaching career where I had that same exact frustration of, why aren't they getting it?
Right. And I even think about like dynamics too, not just pitches. I have a colleague, Ted Williams, who he does his warm-ups, and he sings these warm-up songs that are, I hate to use the word generic, but everyone knows them, like Many Mumbling Mice or Sarah Sponda, things like that. But he's doing dynamics within them. And I was like, why aren't my kids getting dynamics? Like, they know forte means loud. They know piano means quiet. They know crescendo means get louder. But how come his choir can do it and mine can't? And he's literally going, all right, Many Mumbling Mice, mezzo piano to forte with a crescendo, ready, go. And he's performing it with them just in warm-ups. And that's the next step that I'm also taking, is the repertoire starts with the warm-ups. And even before that, it starts with the literacy. So that is kind of my trifold stepping stone for next year, is music literacy leading into warm-ups, and having warm-ups not just be the physicality of warming up your voice, but starting the curriculum there where it leads into the actual curriculum of the repertoire, and they'll get it much faster. And I'm just grateful that I'm making these mistakes in I just finished year 8, and I'm glad I'm not going into year 9 thinking, yeah, I've got it. Like they sing great. They're not the best middle school choir in Wisconsin, but that's never the goal. But they are 1,000 times better than they used to be. And so I kept thinking, I've done it. I've made it. And then I looked at my grading, and here's my other part is that we so desperately as encore, special, whatever you want to call us teachers, want to be treated like core teachers. But I'll speak for just myself. I'm not teaching at a core level expectation where the literacy, the math, the reading, the science teachers all have this pre-built curriculum, but they have the district kind of hounding them, and they have to get X, Y, Z done before the end of the year. I've made the joke numerous times that I can do whatever I want and no one will bat an eye. So why am I not doing the absolute best that I could be doing? And why am I just doing the perform standard and expecting the same amount of respect that our core teachers are getting?
Right. No, that's a really good point. And I think that I like the example of the core teachers and the comparison, and I find that to be really important, and I'd like to drive it home as often as possible. So let's drill in on that for a second. So one example would be if other teachers in our buildings were to go to the public, their parents, their community, etc., and present a math worksheet that was done by the class where they sat around in a group and came up with the right answers, and expected then the people to be impressed. I think everybody would intuitively know, well, that in that situation, the 4 smartest kids in the class did all that work. Mm-hmm. Like the ones who are best at math did all that work. And I think for us in ensemble music, especially in choir, because that connection to like the human voice as a language center is so easy. It's different than in band or orchestra where there's you can't skip the explicit skill building part of band or orchestra because they've got to know know to put their fingers and all that. But you can jump right into music making in choir. And so the temptation, I think, is group project all the time. Group project is my evidence that I'm teaching well. But then what I think a lot of us don't like to acknowledge is that probably means the 4 or 5 smartest kids in the room, or and I'm just using the word smart, but like you most musically adept, confident leaders are going to end up doing most of that mental load and letting all the rest of the kids who might be able to do it too, but they need to work slower at their own pace. They never get a chance to. And then we get to the final product. It's awesome. And then we wonder why we're not viewed as a real class because individuals aren't being held accountable in that way. Is that kind of a fair assessment, do you think?
Yeah. And I would even go further and say like the students notice that too.
Yes.
I've had plenty of students, even at the middle school level, and we have a very strong community and we're very loving in things, but we're also not afraid to hold each other accountable. Even students to me, which I love, they will say, hey, all of us are in a sectional right now and you're just sitting there on your phone. Like, I'm going to go call you out. And if you don't change, I'm going to go tell Mr. Lindley, which I think to some can sound kind of negative or demeaning, but it really does set the standard even within the kids saying, we want to do well in this class. We want to do well on this worksheet or this assignment or this sectional. And you're not pulling your weight. Like just the same with like a basketball team. If 4 out of your 5 players are playing well, but your 5th player is just kind of walking up and down the court, you're not going to get the same result as someone who is their section is all doing the sectional or they're all dribbling the ball the right way. But yeah, kids are not afraid to call each other out or call me out. Like if I miss warm-ups, if I'm like, okay, we don't have enough time today, we're just going to get right into it. We've got a guest coming in. We've got this. They're like, no, you spent 25 minutes the first day of school talking about why warm-ups are important and how we do it like an athlete does. And if we don't warm up, we will hurt our voices. And now you just want to skip it. I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Thanks for calling me out. Let's get into it.
That's awesome. No, I don't think that's negative at all. I can understand. I feel a similar kind of trepidation sometimes with my classroom culture where I wonder if somebody observing without context of the culture would take it as negative. And so I totally get that disclaimer but at the same time, I'm also an athlete and a coach. And I struggle to understand sometimes the difference between sports team culture and choir kid culture, which I think actually should be more similar in the sense that we do need to teach our singers the holding accountable, but we also have to teach them how to hold each other accountable in a way that's not toxic.
Yeah.
because it can go both ways, absolutely. But if it's a mutual, like if it's a mutual thing where not only can they hold you as the teacher accountable, then that helps make it more healthy, I think. Because then when kids try to hold each other accountable, there's a precedent already established for that as a classroom norm, and so yeah, that's a good thing. And I think in middle school it might look different than high school, but for the most part, I think that they're old enough to do that too. And in a lot of ways, I think the world is a much better place if middle school kids are learning to be that mature already. That's a really awesome thing. If you've been dreaming about taking your student group on a trip, your choir, but you want it to be more than just a bus ride and a performance, you should check out Kaleidoscope Adventures. They've been planning exceptional student travel for more than 30 years, and they specialize in creating experiences that are both musically meaningful and logistically smooth. From performance opportunities to workshops and clinics, the Kaleidoscope Adventures team handles the details from start to finish so you can focus on your singers. If you're ready to plan a trip that truly fits your choir, visit mykatrip.com or click the link in the show notes. Do you ever see it go too far with your kids?
Well, for sure. I mean, they're middle schoolers, right? And so
Right.
they're still learning, like inherently their behavior is selfish. And I don't, and like, once again, not in a negative way. It's just developmentally, they are worried about themselves in every aspect. And
Yep.
so there can be times where they go a little too far because they're having a bad day. But what we talk about is be upset with the action. Don't be upset with the person. And so when a kid is disagreeing with me, they're not disagreeing with me. They're disagreeing with my choice or my action. That has been a huge pushing point for this year of disagree or dislike the action, not the person, because the action can change. We're not actually mad at the person. We're just mad that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. No, that's really important too. And also I like to frame it for my kids as an opportunity to remind when we're holding each other accountable, it's not because you're bad, it's because we need you. Like that's it's
good.
because you're important. That's why I'm holding you accountable. It's because I need your voice to help me with my voice. I can't do this by myself. I need you. So that's why you have to get off your phone, whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever the thing is that they're holding each other accountable. And I think if kids can be taught that skill of how to hold by calling someone into the group rather than the toxic kind, which is I would say the pushing someone out of the group because of their behavior. And I think that those are two important distinctions. Now, if it's okay, I'd like to jump into some of the things, not to put you on the spot here, but you said you're working on a new curriculum. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about what are your goals with your new curriculum, as in detail as much as you can there about what you're hoping to change for your next school year?
Yeah. So it's my big project this summer. So I'm in the planning stages right now, but I have essentially taken every Wisconsin state standard and either reworded it to fit my students' needs or left it as is. And then I've gone through and gone, okay, is this actually saying the same thing as another standard? And kind of minimizing how many standards are happening. And then I've listed out, I think, about 9 main tenets that I want to hit. So I want to have a composition project. I want to have an opportunity for them to write music, whether it's 4 measures or 8 measures, or if it's an entire symphony, if some kid wants to do it, just allowing them an opportunity to actually write music. A reflection unit. So music history in there, concert reflection, a concert etiquette unit, because we get invited to perform a lot, but we also get invited to watch performances. And so having that be a skill also is transferable to others. A solfege unit and a music theory unit. And all these units, as you know, they're not sequential, right? Like the grading of that standard will be sequential, but it really is a spiral the entire time, whether you want to go up or down, where you start with your how to read a score. That's our first unit for everybody, no matter if you've read before, if you've not read before. If you have, great, you get to be a leader with me in the class. If you've not, wonderful. We're going to start from ground zero. And then from there, the next unit that we're going to grade on is solfege. But within there, we're already talking about music theory. We're talking about dynamics. We're talking about different, SATB versus SAB versus 2-part. We're talking about form. That's one thing that we inadvertently talk about all the time, of like, just sing the exact same thing you sang before. Right. And that's like, there's an ABA section, and they're like, okay, what do you mean just sing? It's different words. It's not the exact same, different things like that. But yeah, that's essentially what it is in a nutshell right now. I still have to do a lot of fleshing out. I know the end goal is that I want to be better.
Right. Now, if now that you're kind of bought into the idea that better doesn't necessarily get evidenced by the group performance, although of course that is an important part of it. That's we do want our choirs to sound good. I think let's be clear there. But how do you know that it's going to be better? Like, how do you plan to know?
Oh, that's a great question. There's the typical like district mandated portfolios that we have to do in Wisconsin. I'm not sure if you have the same wonderful experience. Okay. Yeah. So we have to do a student-based learning goal. And then we also have to do a personal professional goal, or so an SLO and a PPG. And so as a district, it usually has to be tied to literacy or math. I usually tie mine to literacy because it's easier than trying to quantitate or qualitate anything in math with music. And so that'll help me stay vigilant on it because I'll be in a calendar year, but we'll check mine essentially. But then also doing check-ins. I do a social emotional check-in every month, and the hope is to actually I'm working with Scott Edgar out of Lake Forest College on some of these things, talking about creating a booklet essentially that tracks where I'm setting goals, the kids are setting goals, and then we're checking in bi-weekly. Can you name do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do? Can you identify do, re, mi, fa, so? Can you identify the note names and the keys of C, F, and G? So having those pre-tests, the informative work, and then having the assessment, but before the assessment, having a check-in, because I have found that when I do assessments informally, like you said before, the strongest 5 kids are the ones answering the questions, and the other 25 are coasting. And it's like, okay, well, the class knows it. They just showed me that they know it. And then we go to a paper test, and it's like, okay, why did I have a 5% pass rate? And then I take that, and then that's on me, right? Like if the whole class is failing, it's not because they're dumb. It's because their teacher is.
That's great. And I agree. And I've experienced that too. And I think it's something that I still am trying to get better at. And so, for example, one of those early high school, and again, in reminder of our context, our kids come out of middle school with choir, very limited choir before they get to ninth grade. So ninth grade is actually their first everyday choir in our district. And so I'm one of the things that, because I'm a movable do solfege guru or whatever, key signatures is one of the very first things I need to make sure they all know how to do. Because if I don't know where do is, then none of the other things we do in our warm-ups won't make any sense. They've got to know where to see it on the page, where to write it down if they're still at that point, or any of those things. So I discovered early on that if I ask the class, what key are we in, there will be 3 or 4 piano lesson / band kids who will raise their hand instantly, key of G. Now, the problem with that is that as soon as that happens, everyone else's brain turns off, and they're no longer interested or have any incentive to try to learn it. Because if we do it that way, if we figure out the key signature based on whether or not the person who already knows it, then we're making the wrong assumption about the class. So I still fall into that trap, even though I try to tell myself not to do it, and like to call on an individual person that I'm not sure knows how to do it, and let their brain work it out. And then we do a lot of that in class. But then also doing assessments on worksheets and pre-tests and different types of things. And I wonder too, in your plan, do you have any plans for like specific performance skill assessments? Like, can you sing the scale? Can you hear and dictate this? Like, are you planning on doing any of those types of things as well?
Yeah, I'm trying to find a way that doesn't necessitate individuality in that. I've toyed around with the idea of, in middle school, is it appropriate to have them sing by themselves in front of the class? Because I don't have time, nor do the kids have time, and I can't pull kids out to do one-on-one, which is an ideal situation for me. If I could choose and I had no rules, I would say, okay, Timmy, you're coming in, sing the key of C, here's do, go for it. And then 5 minutes later, he's off. I have to do everything in class. And so my thought process is doing 4 to 5 people at a time, and then having them all sing multiple times and then listen to one person each time. I've also thought about the idea of, we're 1-to-1 Chromebook, having them sing into their Chromebook and then submit it through Canvas. I've heard that's very popular and very successful. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet.
Yeah, that is a tough problem that I hear about a lot because of course that's one of the things that I would argue from I guess a neurological standpoint is that the singing alone has to happen. Like if we really want all these other goals that you and I have discussed, then they have to actually translate it into their voice or everything becomes math essentially. So let's drill into that for a second. In other words, I care, and you're allowed to disagree with me even though it's my show, so just reminder that I don't really care ultimately that my kids can tell me verbally that that's a C. I want them to be able to sing a C. Like I want them to know like that ultimately it's an incomplete skill set until they can actually sing it because it's a singing class. And so and I also know that if they don't have a chance to work it out with their own vocal mechanism and they're always singing along with someone else, then they will hide a lot of their own challenges from themselves and they won't know how to fix them. So I'm just curious, in your situation, you said you can't pull them out by some kind of a rule that you have in the class, like your administration would not allow you to do that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like I can pull out for like say our concert's on Friday, I'm pulling all the choir kids on Tuesday for a rehearsal. I can do that. What would be frowned upon is any time other than recess and lunch, which I do recess and lunch duty. We don't, and it's not just a music or a encore issue. Like it's for everybody except for like ISTs or counselors. Nobody is allowed to pull individually or have an expectation that you can pull from a class.
Oh, I see. You mean to pull from someone else's class?
Correct. Yep.
I thought you meant to pull out during your own class.
Well, I would just have to have, I don't have any para support. And
Right.
So I would have to, I trust my kids, but they're also, once again, middle schoolers. And so like I wouldn't have a spot. And I also wouldn't have a spot that I felt comfortable. The reality of the world and my position as a straight white male is I don't have any positions where I would feel comfortable having women in my classroom one-on-one. You can see behind me, I have a little bit of a window in my office, but it still isn't conducive to one-on-one student interaction.
I see. Yeah, I think everybody's environment or culture would be different with that. One of the things, so having another adult in the space would help with this. And I've had a lot of people who have listened to kind of a lot of the episodes that we've done on this exact topic. One of the things that, and just in case it sparks any ideas for you, is I've had even people go to their administration before the school year starts and explain to them how important this individual check-in is, even like once a semester, if that's all they can pull off for that neurological development. And they've had the principals, if they were able to convince them, okay, some kind of like a building supervisor person, like the hallway supervisor or one of the, just saying, okay, yes, they can come to your class for those 2 or 3 days that it takes to get to everybody. And we can do that at the beginning of the year. And then if you have to do it again at the end of the year, we'll do that just to give them that support, not on a permanent basis. So like of course, I'm in a privileged position where we have 2 choir teachers. And so I can do this without any kind of structural barriers. And so I'm kind of sharing with folks what the benefits of that are, of being able to pull a kid in. We do it 3 times a year for us. We do very beginning of the school year as a pretest, and then we do like progress assessments throughout the year where they come out into a practice room or to the choir office or whatever. And it does take about 5 minutes per kid, and we get to everybody 3 times a year at least. And then, of course, people will write in or message me and say, well, I would love to do that, but I'm only one adult. And so through many conversations like that, that's been one thing that people have done as a solution, is just go to their principal and they've said, okay, yeah, we'll just put a sub in your room for, a building supervisor for 2 or 3 hours or whatever it takes. And if you're in a place that has that kind of support, then that's just an idea. Now, I do have another question on your curriculum too. Is do you plan to have you messed around with Sight Reading Factory's recording capabilities as a way to assess these kids too?
I have not with the recording aspect of it, but we do use Sight Reading Factory. Mm-hmm. We do have a school subscription. Before I answer that though, you did spark an idea in my head about
let's go back.
Yeah. So I have a very supportive administration. The only times they say no to me is if we genuinely do not have the money for it. Otherwise, right, I usually get told yes. I just remember that our library technicians love having our kids in there. And so what I could do during my own class time is have the kids in the library, which is not that far away from my classroom, and then have one kid at a time come in for 5 minutes. Because in my head, I was thinking that these check-ins needed to happen monthly or bi-monthly. But if it's 3 times a year, I think that's extremely doable and something that I should think about doing for next year. So thank you for that.
Yes, and if you can pull it off, you will also find, I feel very comfortable saying this as like a thing I know will happen for you, is your culture and your trust level between you and the kids will even increase. Because what I discover, the reason I advocate so strongly for this approach is that all, like, kind of like we've been talking about this whole time, of the 4 or 5 kids in each class who are already super confident. They are the ones who will sing out. They are the ones who will answer the key signature question. They will be the one that's like contribute with almost no coaxing. But then there's always also going to be the 5 or 6 kids in every choir class. I feel like this is a universal, who are super shy, almost contribute nothing, but not because they are stupid, but because they are just not confident in themselves. And in these individual assessments, what I've discovered over the years, and I've been doing it now for almost 15 years this way, is that kid, the kid at the bottom end of the confidence distribution, is the one who benefits from it the most, because I get to hear them when by themselves and hear them discover in that moment that they actually can do the things that they hear the confident kids do, but because we never gave them a chance to do it at their own pace, they got all the way through the choir and they internalize, I can't do this, but she can. I can't do this, but he can. And so it can be a transformative thing. And so what we do is essentially that 3 times a year in person, but then we use the Sight Reading Factory recording features to do any other monthly or weekly or quarterly or whatever people think is appropriate check-ins. That way, when we do give them the feedback from their recordings, we have some kind of a context for the things that they struggled with when they were in that one-on-one. And so I would strongly encourage that you try that. And I don't really know the best way to solve the females in the room question, if that's a concern for you. It's never really been a concern for me. Maybe just because I just didn't have the chance for it to be a concern, because my kids are 2/3 girls and I got to do it. We just do it. And, and
in
yes,
my classroom, it would be fine. In my classroom, it would be fine. But with if it was to take them into my office, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. But with my whole classroom, I could just have the band door open and say, hey, just so you know, we're going to do a little one-on-one lesson, and that would be totally fine.
Yeah. Now, another idea I've heard people do too, to kind of address, I guess not specifically that concern, but would probably help, is I've had people, just to speed it up, give their kids the chance to say, is there a group of 4 or 5 kids that you would feel comfortable doing this assessment with? Now, they don't get to sing with them, because they understand this idea of like, I've got to let my own brain do this. I've got, if I'm having trouble feeling the difference between do and mi, for example, I need my vocal mechanism to do it. So they don't get to sing together, but it saves time and saves the supervision problem to say, okay, so you're on a list of 4 or 5 girls. You guys are all going to come to my room at the same time, and then we'll just go one down the row. And you guys, but if you feel, you can choose your own friends basically to do that with. And if you don't, then you can do it by yourself also. And that gives the kids like a sense of choice and how they function. So that's just another idea.
Yeah, and to support your statement from earlier about the kid who needs it at their own speed and level, not because they're dumb and they can't do it, but because they're shy. We actually had a student like that this year who we ended up giving the Hidden Gem Award to, because it was someone who never looked for the spotlight, but was able to do everything that everyone else could do. And it wasn't until I did a one-on-one solo audition with her that I was like, where have you been? Like, this is amazing. I was like, if you sing in front of your classmates right now, they will be shocked. And she's like, well, I'll do it if you want me to. And I was like, yes, let's do it right now. And we brought the kids back in, and she sang, I think it's Speechless from the new Aladdin movie, the updated version. And there was a bunch of pop riffs, and there was a bunch of different things that she could show off. And everyone in the class at the end didn't even clap right away. They were just like, where has this been? And so that, just to support even that one-off thing of individuality, gave her the confidence to sing in front of everybody. And then from then on out, she couldn't use the excuse of I'm shy, because everyone knew that she was too good for that.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I think is true of both middle school kids and high school kids, really throughout the adolescent and teen years, is that if we let them, most teenagers will develop a very negative self-narrative about how they function with things. We're just at that age developmentally where if they don't have evidence that they're good at a thing and they don't have that public feedback, then they will become that hidden gem. But inside, if we don't figure out a way to recognize each one of them that are that way, then they'll start to tell themselves kind of negative self-talk of like, I can't sing or I can't do this, because in the group class environment, they see other kids having evidence of success quicker than they are. And that starts to turn into like an I can't do this narrative. And so a lot of this individual work, that's kind of why I do it, is because I want them to not have that excuse anymore. Like I want them to know that they can do it, and what do it looks like might be different for them. Maybe they're never going to be the brave soloist kid, but that they can still contribute to the choir. And I think that sounds to me like a lot of the building blocks that you're setting forward with the things that you've said already. That's kind of where you're headed, it sounds like.
Yeah. I'm excited to see. I came in with all these ideas and now I'm leaving with even more, which I really appreciate, because I know part of the reason why I wanted to come on here was not just to talk about myself and how bad I am at teaching, but it was to get some ideas and in real time too. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Now, I also appreciate the reflection and the just kind of your willingness to, well, and you can say how bad you are a teacher, but I wouldn't think of it that way. I would think of it as the ways that you're going to model growth for your students. And if this were me, if I could go back to being 8 years in instead of 23, I would probably have started earlier in my teaching career if I could go back, modeling that growth, but specifically modeling that growth by starting the school year by saying things like, these are some things that I learned about the way that I was teaching in the past that didn't go very well, and I can be better. And, of course, everybody's verbiage might be different for the way that they would have that. But I'm a big believer in being transparent with kids about, hey, we're going to be changing some things next year, and it's because I think I did it wrong. Like, I can do this better. And then we set
exactly
up that. Yeah, go ahead.
So that's exactly how I ended the year. Was we said thank you to our clinical teacher, and I was like, guys, I've realized I need to do more, not more, but things better next year. And I said, I'm sorry that I didn't do it this year. I said, but next year, those of you going to high school will get this right away, and those of you sticking with me in middle school, we're going to start the year off right. And I'm going to take this summer to really learn about this stuff. So that's exactly how I ended the school year with them.
That's all. How did they react? How did the kids react?
Some of them went finally, like they did not mince their words. And some of them were like, they wrote in their cards, like, thank you for showing me what it means to like fail and then get back up again. Or thanks for showing me how to never give up, or that you're never done learning, kind of thing. Because I'm 32, which means to people older than me, I'm young, and to people younger than me, I'm old. And so I'm in this limbo right now and trying to show them that you're never too old to learn new things.
Right. No, that's really good. And I think that's to be commended and respected. And your kids will, I think, even grow to respect it more the further down this road that you get, because the more you are starting to assess the kind of individual skills, the more this will become part of their normal also for your kids, because they're going to start to see choir as not just a concert at the end of a 2-month period. They're going to see that choir as a day-to-day growth of really concrete skills. I just call them choir basics, like all the things that every kid in a choir should know how to do, not just like the final product. It's a sum of its parts. And then the individual kids in there will start to feel more important, and they will feel like they have more of a buy-in and ability to control their own destiny, those types of things. And so I think you're heading down a really exciting path. Now, if it's okay, before we finish up, I would like to kind of go into just a little bit of what some of your goals are for year one of this the new Ryan Lindley for next year in terms of group performance, because we've been talking a lot about how you've been over programming or maybe focusing too much on the concert. And I think it's fair to assume that doesn't mean you don't care about the concerts at all. So what are your concerts going to look like next year? Are you planning to program differently? Are you doing less songs, less concerts? unchanged, what is your approach there?
Less concerts for sure, making more things optional. So for instance, singing, like having our main curricular concerts still be curricular and graded and things like that. That's another conversation for a different day. But singing in Wisconsin or some of these like weekend things, having them be very optional for kids who want to further perform rather than saying our standard is performing 18 times a year or whatever number it was.
Wow.
So having our, we do have a couple engagements next year where we're singing like carols and things like that. But instead of 4-part, 3-part harmony carols, it's probably just okay to do 1 and 2-part, and have it be less rigorous in like parts, but more rigorous in understanding the 1 and 2 parts of those Christmas carols and other different holiday music. We do have, we applied for the WCDA, Wisconsin Choral Directors Association, a winter conference. We applied to be a part of that. So if that happens, that'll be great. We have I forget what I called it now, but it's a collaboration concert with another city in Wisconsin. But that's going to be very low key. It's more of a you sing for us, we sing for you exchange concert is what we called it. And so not even like getting the parents involved and not having it graded, but just here's what we sound like, here's what you sound like kind of deal, different communities. And then we'll have our spring concert, and I'll probably continue to have my concerts be informances where we can program 12 to 15 songs, but have them be explained by the kids and have different stories. And we always do community partnerships as well. A couple of years ago, we did a day-by-day shelter, warming shelter, and we raised money for them. And they came in and talked about what they do. This past year, we were fundraising for New York City. We're performing at Carnegie Hall this weekend with their youth choir festival. And then this next year will be the National Association of Mental Illness, NAMI. And so having them come in and talk about their resources and what they can expect to give to Oshkosh. And so we've been doing a lot of community partnerships that way too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, since you did mention that you came also hoping for ideas, I've got another one for you. Have you thought about, or do your kids already get small ensemble performance opportunities? Do they get it? Do they ever get to do small groups?
We do have solo ensemble, which we do in-house. And so it's a little less, we just use the word I've been using. So it's a little less rigorous because there's not a lot of the scariness of solo ensemble. You get that in high school. In middle school, we really focus on having that individualized singing or that small group singing. So we do have that aspect in there, but the individual singing is optional. Whereas before, you and I were talking about making individualized singing not an option, but a choir basic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the reason I ask is because it sounds like in the structure that you're going for, which is less mandatory full group total performances that maybe would feel like you're cramming all year long. Is that kind of a fair way to explain it? So in that structure, one of the things that I could picture being really positive is that creating time for, let's say you're doing a 2-part instead of a 4-part version of something, to even have within your class period, kids split up into small ensembles that perform for each other in an informal assessment kind of way, giving each other feedback. It could be a thing where, all right, guys, next Wednesday and Thursday, we're gonna divide up into these groups, and this time it's Tina, Tommy, and Timmy, and you're a group, and then everyone else they have different groups, and the groups could be different each time you do it. Kind of forcing that collaboration, giving each other feedback in that kind of a way, which if you're doing less divisi, then that becomes an easier activity for class, and that also gives you a chance to give them feedback too, because now you're hearing them in smaller groups. It also helps normalize for them singing in front of each other, and kind of gets over some of that fear to sing alone just by making it fun and informal. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think the easiest way for me to implement that would be through the Christmas carols.
Yep.
Where instead of just having the entire class sing the same carol, we could actually have small ensembles preparing different carols, or even the same one and performing for each other, or different carols performing for each other and for community members. I think that's, once again, I'm writing all this down in my head, and right after this, I'll be writing it all down on paper so I don't forget.
Yeah, no, that's great. And of course, you'll have a permanent record in the form of a podcast that you can always go back and check the ideas. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for spending this time with me. And it sounds like you're on the right track, and I hope you'll keep me posted on how some of these things go, because I really think that this is a good direction for any and all of us to go. Just yes, we want it. We want performances that are good, and yes, choir is a performance art. But there are so many things between 0 to 60, so to speak, that kids need the chance to do. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, I really appreciate all your time and your insights. And honestly, I would love to do a 1-year check-in. I think that'd be a lot of fun to see if I just talk the talk or if I actually walk the walk as well next year.
That would be fun. Yes, definitely. Kind of next summer, check in and see how it went for you. That would be awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan, for joining me.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of a conversation. If you are still hearing my voice, that means you're one of the MVPs, one of the diehards, one of the real ones, as the kids say. So if you are willing on the way out to check out a few different ways that you can help me continue to make this show high quality. 1, use the promo code. That's the biggest one at Sight Reading Factory, at mymusicfolders.com, at mychoirropes.com, at graphitepublishing.com, and endeavormusicpublishing.com. All of those take the Choirlosophy checkout code. And of course, now the newest one is 3-Minute Theory. You can get a 15% discount when you enter Choirlosophy at checkout there. And of course, going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a positive review is very helpful there, and sharing the episodes to your colleagues in real life and on social media. All of those things are incredibly helpful and allow me to continue to create this resource for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.